I feel like it's right around this time of the year where you're going to hear all these different trade rumors start to circulate about players that are heading into contract years. And that's exactly what we're talking about on today's Broncos Breakdown episode by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday. Make sure you join us later for our live show, which begins promptly at 4 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So let's get right into Mr. Chris Olave, shall we? Former first-round pick by the Saints, made the 2022 All-Rookie team, obviously has shown that he has the ability to make big plays happen when he's on the field and not dealing with his injuries, as he missed 2024 season, the last 9 games, with a terrible string of concussion issues. Now, you'll find that later on as we go throughout the video, that seems to be a pattern of his. But the sporting news was the one that actually kind of broke this story and kind of linked Chris Olave to the Broncos by saying, entering a contract year, Olave would understandably not want to undergo a rebuild in New Orleans right now with brand new head coach Kellen Moore and with Tyler Shuck, progressively seeming to be the starting quarterback there, to cash in on his second contract, enter the Broncos, who should be on the hunt for more stacked weapons to compete in the AFC West. Olave would be a perfect addition to the Denver offense and would complement Sutton's skill set well, lining up on the opposite of him. Now, Chris Olave plays a interesting style of football, and I do like that they linked Courtland Sutton in with this, because while Courtland seems to be a very fluid wide receiver, somebody that can find the end zone, Olave's more of your middle-of-the-field possessions wide receiver. In fact, he's targeted quite frequently, or was at least, in this Saints offense. Now, the Saints have exercised Olave's fifth-year option, which would lead you to believe they are interested in retaining him on the team heading into the 2025 season. It seems like the Saints want to do it's not a full rebuild, it's more of like a regathering and kind of a fine-tuning of the roster. I don't agree with that. If you get rid of your quarterback after he retires and your head coach, you're clearly in a rebuild, and I expect the Saints to have a very struggling seasons. But when it comes to Olave's production on the field, like I said before, you're looking at a guy who is a clear number one wide receiver on that team. Now, it doesn't really do a lot of justice for his receptions. He is clearly right around 140 targets per year. So when healthy, Chris Olave is elite, and he has had to deal with a string of bad quarterback play. Derek Carr is probably the most mid quarterback, or at least was the most mid quarterback in the entirety of the NFL. And then guys like Spencer Rattler, coming along. It hasn't been a great run for Chris Olave when it comes to his quarterback play. Now, I kind of draw some comparisons, not maybe in the way that they play, perchance, but more so the position they held on the team. And the one guy that I like to draw comparisons to is Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas was the number one option for the Saints back in 2016 to about 2020. Same with Chris Olave. And as you can see, while Thomas had slightly better numbers, Olave isn't that far behind. In fact, Olave actually has bigger, playmaking ability than Thomas did, as Thomas was commonly referred to as Captain Slants. It was his number one route that he liked to run, was a slant route with Drew Brees. But they ran it to perfection during their time in New Orleans. Now, could you imagine, just hypothetically right now, this dynamic duo of Courtland Sutton and Chris Olave? On paper, this is fantastic. This is a really, really good duo. Probably a top 7 duo, maybe top 8 in the entirety of the NFL, if it were to happen. So before I get into any more of the video, I want to throw it up to you. Would you trade for Chris Olave? Yes or no? Simple question. And if so, let me know why. And if not, let me know why. I know a lot of people have been getting down in the comments recently talking about how they believe in this younger core of wide receivers the Broncos currently have as taking the next step. But if you feel like Chris Olave could make an excellent addition, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, what does a trade offer look like? Because you can't just throw out this article, right, and say, hey, this would make a great addition without at least exploring what a trade offer could potentially look like. Well, the Sporting News actually goes on to give their opinion on what that might look like. And they say Olave's talent has never been in question, but his health is becoming a big concern. Understatement of the century. Olave has sustained several major concussions dating back to his college days at Ohio State, and though he is only 24 years old, 25 in June, there is doubt about how long his career may continue. Would the Broncos really be well served to send a second-round pick in that case? Okay, first of all, let's just tackle one thing at a time here. There have been rumors floating out that Olave has considered retirement. I don't believe that. I think he wants to continue to play. But when you get into as many concussions as he has, same thing with Tua, you start to throw around the, like, hey, CTE could become a thing in your future. You don't want that to happen, so you have to have at least the conversation about potentially retiring. Like I said, I kind of stop that, nip that right in the bud. I think he's so hell-bent on playing for the next couple of years at least. Now, the Sporting News came out with their own trade idea that I previously mentioned, and that would be sending Chris Olave to the Broncos in exchange for a 2026 second-round pick. And I got a lot of issues with this. Number one, I'm not giving up a second for Olave. I understand the talent's there, but a second-round pick is far too great of draft capital to give up for a player with as many injury concerns as Olave has. And if you don't believe me, let's just take a look at the last four, right? This isn't even going back to Ohio State. These are just the last four major ones he's sustained over the last 2 years. So he goes concussion in Week 12 against the Falcons in 2023, followed by 2 weeks later, a sprained ankle against the Panthers. Okay, so one off for each. That's fine. But then it got worse. Concussion in Week 6 against the Buccaneers in 2024, which was last season. And then, of course, that concussion that seemingly knocked him out for the rest of the year against the Panthers in Week 9. So it's obvious Olave has major concussion issues. Now, this is not a minor knee thing or ankle thing or wrist thing. This is a serious injury that a lot of NFL teams are very, very wary of. Now, I'm not disclosing or discrediting a Chris Olave trade. I think there is a path to the Broncos obtaining him. It just does not involve a second-round pick. Now, before I get into that, make sure you start shopping with our friends at Fanatics. I almost said friends and fans at the same time. Our friends at Fanatics. This shirt right here is 25% off, and you can start your shopping to buy this shirt and many other Broncos gear and apparel items with this link right here in the comments and description of today's video. I made it super simple. All you have to do is click on the link and start shopping with our friends at Fanatics today. So my trade offer kind of looks like this. Olave and a 7th-round pick in 2026 for a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick in 2026 to the Saints. Now, even this, I was kind of hesitant. This, to me, was like, do I really want to give up 2 draft picks to get a player who has a multitude of not only injuries, but major injury concerns? And I ultimately said, okay, I'll pull the trigger on this because in the event that Olave stays healthy, you would be getting this at kind of a bargain price. Because I don't think the Saints would want to take this offer. In fact, I think they're kind of hell-bent on signing or re-signing, extending Chris Olave. But if some team were to give them a second, I don't think that they would even remotely consider re-signing him. They would just make that deal in a heartbeat. So I think they look at this and they go, it's a little low for what we're thinking. But with his injury history, teams are going to be very hesitant to give up high draft capital. And that's just the truth. I mean, if you had one concussion, let's just go back and say if he had one concussion, I think you could offer a 2nd-round pick in a heartbeat. But now that he has shown that not only has he had 3 major ones in his NFL career, you also have to factor in that he's dealt with injuries back at Ohio State. And I know that there's probably a lot of Broncos fans that are thinking to themselves, what about the Sean Payton connection? Well, there is no Sean Payton connection because Sean Payton left the Saints the year that Olave got drafted. So there is no connection other than the fact that Sean Payton was the coach of the Saints. So there was no decision made by Payton to bring in Chris Olave, although I'm sure he has very nice things to say about it. In fact, most NFL GMs and head coaches actually have very great things to say about Olave's talent. They think he's an excellent player, but those concerns about the injuries are very, very real. And again, I know we've talked a lot about injuries, but we're talking about the most major one that a player can go through. This is like the kiss of death for an NFL player. When you deal with multiple concussions throughout your NFL career, not only does your health come into concern, but your longevity as a person comes into concern. We have seen a ton of cases where players are in their early to mid 40s that are dealing with severe CTE issues. And, you know, it's scary for all of those involved, not just the player, but the families and the friends of the player as well. So it is something to be concerned about, and it is something that I feel like has to be taken in consideration. But if you were willing to get a player of his caliber and his talent, and he's willing to continue to play, this could be the price that you would ask for it. All right. Remember to join us today at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. 4 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Mountain Time for Broncos Live. We're going to have some nice, juicy segments for you. And, of course, a little mailbag edition to round out the show as well. Before we end, I want to ask you this. Name your favorite all-time Broncos wide receiver. God, if you would have asked me this a long time ago, back when I first really started to watch everything, I would have said Wes Welker. I'll give me Rod Smith. You have to. That's kind of a chalk pick, but, you know, I like those chalk picks every now and then. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's episode. Remember to comment that in the comment section down below. My name is Moose. Remember to subscribe, like the video, share this with a Broncos friend in your life. Until next time, be cool.